RFP template and C2D training is brought to you by the Chief Procurement Office for General Services. We will begin with the RFP template. The new RFP template was created with end users and vendors in mind. If we write better RFPs, then the vendor community can better understand our needs and will propose a solution that will best fit that need. We have broken down the RFP into specific sections that will help end users be able to document what the needs and desires of the agency are, as well as making it clear for the vendor community to understand what it is the agency needs and how to best provide a solution. Throughout the document, you will see comments off to the side as instruction, explanation, or reminders. You will also find purple lettering that the agency is to replace with their own information. The purple lettering may be to instruct the agency to enter specific information like agency name and title of the procurement, or may be instructional explaining what information should go into that section. The purple lettering and font style are being utilized for ADA compliance purposes. The first section, Section A, Scope of Work of the new template, is aimed to explain to the vendor community what it is the state needs and why they should work with us. Overview and purpose. This may be a couple of sentences or a few short paragraphs. The intent of the overview and purpose is to provide the vendor community a picture of what it is the agency needs at a high level. This section will help a potential offerer decide if they want to learn more and keep reading. Desired outcomes of this project engagement. Here you want to provide the desired outcomes the agency wants out of the contract. This may include specific deliverables. If there is a transition of services or migration of data, this information should be entered in this section. Schedule and budget. This can be helpful to provide a clear and transparent identification of timing needs and constraints of the project engagement. Providing a budget may help an offerer narrow their proposal to something that is within that budget. Providing historical spend is another way to paint the picture of what the agency is anticipating. Budgets help quality vendors determine if the project is worth their time and also how much effort would need to go into the project. A procurement schedule can help a vendor understand the timeline of the agency. For example, if the agency needs a system up and running by January 1st of 2025, and they plan on signing the contract by January 1st of 2024, then an offerer understands they would have about 1 year to get a system up and running. If the agency needs services to start January 1st, 2025, but the solicitation isn't published until July 1st of 2024, the vendor may not have the time or staffing to complete the project within that requirement. Overall, this can be specifically helpful for IT procurements, where the vendor may be required to propose who will be working on or managing the project. If they know the agency plans a start date 9 months from now, then they may be able to propose their A-team. If the agency leaves the schedule blank, then the vendor has to guess and determine who they may have available for their team at that time. Unique considerations. This is an opportunity to tell the vendor community why the agency's situation is special. Are there special considerations like space, time, collective bargaining, or budget considerations? How is the agency different than the vendor's normal customer base? This section isn't required as it may not always apply. However, it is often found that there are special considerations that should have been brought forward right away. Rather than addressing them in Q&A or during the resulting contract, now is the time to present those in the solicitation document. Term The terms section should be familiar to you. We have provided a few examples, suggestions on how to write your start and end date. There may be other ways to do this as well. Section B, current conditions. This goes into detail about where the state is now so vendors can better understand where they're starting from. Overview and background. Painting a picture of where the agency is at today will help a good vendor propose an appropriate solution. For example, if your agency has been handling paper submissions for the last 65 years of a program, and now you want an electronic system for the public to use for submittal, then the vendor will need to know more than just, it's paper now and we want a system. Explaining what is submitted, what forms are currently utilized, how the public now submits, the time of year submissions happen, all can help the vendor understand the current background. Volumes and quantities. This may not be applicable for a brand new program, but estimates may help. If there is a previous history, the volume and quantities can be very important to a vendor submitting a proposal. A system that handles 100,000 transactions a year is going to be very different than a system that handles 500 transactions a year. Another example may be visitor volumes. A vendor may be very interested in managing a restaurant at your site. Important information will be how many people are working from that office, or how many visits does your site get from visitors a day? Does that fluctuate depending on the month or season? Areas of concern and challenges. This information not only will be important during implementation to avoid hidden issues, but it will also be important for a vendor to provide a proposal that fits your overall need. This would also align with evaluation factors. We would want to know how an offerer is going to overcome or fix our concerns and challenges. Strengths. What is working well for the agency right now? This often gets overlooked, but it can be very important to tell the vendor community what is going well. These strengths would be important evaluation criteria for the agency to review how an offerer is going to continue or expand the strengths that the current system has. Figures, diagrams, and reference documents. These documents can be utilized to provide a snapshot of the project or engagement. Examples of this are reports that are run, the workflow of an existing system, or other outputs that you currently have. This will be valuable information for an offerer that is unfamiliar with the current program, service, or system. Provide a description of what is located in Section G and insert these documents and attachments in Section G. Section C, Proposal Requirements. Now that we have clearly explained to the vendor community what we need and where we are now, the vendor will want to know how to submit. Please note that if a document is not required, for example, if there's no BEP goal, then you may remove that requirement. We have provided the instructions on how to submit and bid by within the RFP template. Throughout the template, we've also reminded the vendors to not enter cost in the alternate description. Most of Section C should be familiar to you. There are limited areas for the agency to fill in information. If the RFP contains a BEP or VBP goal, the agency will fill out these subsections appropriately. If there is not a goal, please remove these subsections. Please note that in C.12 Terms and Conditions, within the template, we have provided a link to the State of Illinois Standard Terms and Conditions. The terms and conditions will be a part of the resulting contract and referenced here for vendors to review if they would like to. So now that vendors know how to submit, we are going to walk them through how we will evaluate so that they know what to submit to us. This will be covered in Section D, the evaluation procedures. Section D will cover the full evaluation process, as well as what is covered under responsiveness. There are a few areas for the agency to update depending on if they change some numbers or bulleting. We have broken the technical proposal down to mandatory requirements without evidence, mandatory requirements with evidence, and desirable elements. Mandatory requirements without evidence, well, these are requirements the vendor must do during the contract and will become the contract terms. Many times an agency would want to have a checkbox or something for the vendor to say, yes, we will meet that requirement. This is where those requirements will go. An example may be, vendor must submit weekly reports to the program manager by close of business on Friday. This requirement isn't something for them to propose a solution to. They either need to agree or acknowledge that this is a requirement. Again, these will become the contract terms. Mandatory requirements with evidence. These speak to if the vendor can perform the work. For example, there may be a requirement for 3 years of experience. The offerer will need to provide evidence of that requirement and that they can meet that requirement with their proposal. This is a requirement to be responsive to the RFP. Desirable elements are areas that the agency will evaluate and score. These are not pass and fail like the mandatory requirements. In Chart D.3, there are examples provided. The agency will need to update these examples to the ones that will actually fit your needs. D.4 explains the commitment to diversity elements. Agency and vendor forms instructions can be found on the CPOGS website. We will go into that in more detail in the second half of this training. Section D.5, Minimum Required Points. This is not a required section, but can be useful for some RFPs. D.6, Price. This explains pricing points, which should be at least 20% of the overall points. D.7, the maximum number of points. This explains all the points from above in one section. Section E, Administrative Requirements. This is standard language that has been used in the past. Section E.1 through E.7 will cover the governing law and forum, public records and requests for confidential treatment, minority contract initiative, federal funds, employment tax credit, reservations, and award. Section E.8 through E.10 covers the invoicing address, the protest review office, and responsibility. Section F, Proposal Forms. Here we tell the vendor community how to provide us the information we need and explain what specific areas the agency will be evaluating. F.1, Mandatory Requirements Without Evidence. This requirement isn't something for the vendors to propose a solution to. They either need to agree or acknowledge that it is a requirement. F.2, Mandatory Requirements with Evidence. The offerer will need to provide evidence that they meet these requirements within their proposal. This is a mandatory requirement to be responsive. As you can see, we have provided a location for vendors to tell the agency where in their proposal, section, and page number the information can be found. This will help evaluators find the information within the proposal. Although the vendor is supposed to tell us where to find the information, all information in the proposal should be taken into account by evaluators when evaluating these mandatory requirements. F.3 covers desirable elements. We have provided examples in purple. This may not align with the project that you have. Please update the chart to fit your needs. Be clear what the point value is for each section, and we again provide a location for the offerer to enter the section and page number to help evaluators. Please be advised that evaluators are to read the entire proposal. This section and page numbers are just an aid. Other information found in the proposal must be considered by the evaluation team. F4 provides vendors with location of the C2D guidance so that they can utilize the guidance and forms to respond to the RFP. F.5 is a section that may be removed, as noted in the comment, if demonstrations are not being used by the agency. If the agency is utilizing demonstrations, then F.5.1 will need to be completed by the agency. F.6 Pricing. Overall, section F.6 should look familiar as it is very similar to what has been used in the past. Pricing should be entered into bid by only, unless after consultation with your SPO, a pricing spreadsheet is deemed to be necessary. The agency will need to remove F.6.1.1 or F.6.1.2. This will be dependent on if your RFP was issued with all pricing being able to be entered into bid by, or if your SPO has approved the use of a pricing attachment due to the complexity of the pricing. If you do not have renewals, you may delete subsection F.6.6 for renewals since they do not apply. Section G, Attachments and Exhibits. This is the final section of the RFP template. In Section G, you will attach any reference documents mentioned earlier. Federal requirements or agency-specific terms and conditions would also be attached here. Now that we've covered the RFP template, we're going to go over the Illinois Commitment to Diversity evaluation factors. With the creation of the Commitment to Diversity evaluation factor, the Chief Procurement Officers were given the responsibility of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the procurement process. Section 30 ILCS 500-20-15 of the Illinois Procurement Code requires vendors to submit information demonstrating their commitment to diversity within these 5 categories. Whether or how well the offerer on the solicitation being evaluated met the goal of contracting or subcontracting with businesses owned by women, minorities, or persons with disabilities. Whether the offerer on the solicitation being evaluated assisted businesses owned by women, minorities, or persons with disabilities in obtaining lines of credit, insurance, necessary equipment, supplies, materials, or related assistance or services. The percentage of prior year revenues of the offerer that involve businesses owned by women, minorities, or persons with disabilities. Whether the offerer has a written supplier diversity program, including but not limited to the use of diverse vendors in the supply chain, and a training or mentoring program with businesses owned by women, minorities, or persons with disabilities. The percentage of members of the offerer's governing board, senior executive, and managers who are women, minorities, or persons with disabilities. A quick reminder of how we got here is that these 5 categories are important and are all part of the new factor under Section 30 ILCS 500-20-15. The Commitment to Diversity C2D evaluation factor is added to the request for proposal procurement. For equity, we will be utilizing 6 nationally recognized evaluation criteria, with time commitment being the addition. The C2D factor encourages offerers to increase their investment in women, minorities, and persons with disabilities and organizations by awarding up to 20% of the technical scoring total. The new evaluation factor creates new and exciting opportunities for offerers to not only impact their business and local community, but to help create systemic change. Some key things to note about this new process before we begin. Our website is a wonderful resource for understanding the process. The guidance packets take you through question by question with examples and explanations. We also recently uploaded videos going in depth on each factor. The factor presented here cannot be changed. The wording and point distribution must stay the same agency to agency to ensure a fair process. References will be accepted in written form so that there is no confusion or issues with calling or emailing reference contacts. Agencies no longer need to calculate what the Commitment to Diversity max score is and how to get the points to add up to it. Instead, we will show you this later. The agency simply needs to enter the max technical score, and the sheet will calculate the max C2D score and the score received based on the points earned. Along with all of our guidance resources, our DEI specialist is here to help you. You can contact her in that office by emailing cpogs.dei@illinois.gov. All important documents can be found at the CPOGS website. You can get there directly by going cpo-general.illinois.gov/diversity-equity-inclusion. Again, if you go to the CPOGS website, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the link for Commitment to Diversity. On this site, you will find a guidance packet that goes into in-depth instruction for every factor, the Commitment to Diversity scoring sheet, and a definition page for reference. Ensuring that every participant in the procurement process is confident and comfortable with their role in completing their part of the Commitment to Diversity evaluation factor, there have been 2 new guidance documents created to provide both our agencies and vendors a roadmap to make the most of the C2D process. On our website, you'll find an agency visual job aid. It provides a visual step-by-step of how agency evaluators should evaluate their assigned Commitment to Diversity factors. In addition to the agency visual job aid, there is a vendor visual job aid. This provides a visual step-by-step of how offerers should complete and submit their Commitment to Diversity evaluation submission. At this time, we'll do a walkthrough of the new Commitment to Diversity evaluation. We will be looking at the vendor answer form, then the scoring sheet to better understand how the factors are to be scored. When you open the scoring sheet, you may have this yellow bar at the top of your sheet. It can be ignored, or you can click on it, which will cause an error to pop up, either saying it cannot update or something is wrong with your links. Click Continue. Then enter the vendor name, the date, and the evaluator initials. Factor 1 is about BEP compliance. The vendor must select if they fulfilled the goal, filled out a good faith waiver, are self-fulfilling, or that there is no goal. Then they must provide some form of verification to back up their claim. If they haven't submitted their U-Plan yet, they can share a list of the vendors they will be using. If there is no goal, then they automatically get the 5 points to help keep from having to have multiple versions of this answer form. In this example, the offerer provided verification but did not check any of the boxes. So, would they get the points? The answer is yes. Even though they didn't check the box, they did provide the verification. Therefore, they get the points. This is a good example of why it is so important to add a comment. This way, even at a glance, anyone can tell exactly why a point was or was not awarded. Factor 2 awards points for contracting or subcontracting with any women, minorities, or persons with disabilities that is not part of their current U plan. The offeror here provided their contracts, which may be redacted, and filled out everything in the table except the cost of the contract. Even if the vendor does not provide the cost, if they provide the verification, it can be accepted. At this point, due to limited data, having any contracts with WMD will earn 10 points. Spend is based on the prior year's gross revenue. The WMD they spend money on does not have to be BEP certified. Some examples of DEI spend items could be purchasing a DEI program for employees to participate in, helping a WMD with supplies, providing discounts to WMD, sponsoring school programs that promote DEI, or sponsoring a fundraiser for WMD initiatives. Having any amount of spend towards DEI or WMD will help them gain 10 points. DEI time was created so that if a business does not have the means to put their money towards DEI, they can still contribute their time. Time can be proven through event pages, emails, flyers. The success of the event does not affect the score. Some examples of DEI time could be helped a WMD apply for grants, hosted DEI meetings within the business, volunteered at an event that promotes WMD, provided advertising for WMD, had employees take a DEI class, participated in a WMD career panel, or created a mentorship with WMD youth. Anything under an hour gets rounded up to an hour. So this offer has 8.5 hours. That would round up to 9, and they would receive 15 points. For Factor 5, we are not just wanting a DEI policy, but a policy with an actionable plan, meaning it has the framework for achieving objectives and process guidelines. An actionable plan example would be Green Acres best serves our clients when we foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. We have worked to create this environment through several programs and practices, including our employee resource groups. Staff are encouraged to participate in any ERG that they identify with and are given a paid hour once a week to attend those groups. A policy that shouldn't be accepted is one that reflects philosophies, defines culture, and focuses only on high-level aspirations. For example, if the proposal would have stated, Green Acres is committed to workforce diversity, creating equity across our systems, and fostering and advancing a culture of inclusion. Our culture of belonging is about uniting different backgrounds, beliefs, abilities, and experiences in an environment where everyone feels valued and works together to achieve meaningful outcomes. Because this evaluator was diligent with leaving comments, we can see that the offer did not get any points because their policy was just philosophical. Diversity in staffing is confirmed by providing a staff list. Names can be redacted. We just need to see confirmations of ethnicity and gender. On the previous example, they shared their numbers on the table, but provided no verification. This resulted in the vendor receiving 0 points for this category. This is what is at the bottom of every offer answer form. This puts the responsibility of truth and accuracy back into the hands of the offerer. Once all the answers have been reviewed and scored, you can click the second tab of the scoring sheet. All your scores and comments will have pulled over to this sheet. This is where the max technical score will be entered. The sheet will automatically fill in what the actual score would be based off 20% of your technical score. If you have any questions regarding DEI, please contact our CPOGS DEI team at cpogs.dei@illinois.gov.